Walk any brokerage dock from Stuart, Florida to Anacortes, Washington, and you will find them lined up in the sun, teak gleaming, asking prices that look like the deal of a lifetime. $30,000 for a real live-aboard trawler, the best boat money can buy. At least that is what the captain in the polo shirt is going to tell you. What he is not going to tell you is that the cheapest boat on that dock can hide one repair that costs more than the boat itself, a teak-deck or a rotted fuel tank that runs $30,000 to $60,000 to put right on a hull you paid $30,000 for. These are the trawlers the smart money walks straight past, and this is a short list the broker will never hand you. If you had asked anybody walking these docks in 1979 about a marine trader or a Choy Lee, they would have told you that you were buying a world-class ocean boat for pennies on the dollar. They had no idea what was curing under that pretty teak. So here is the rule the whole list runs on, and it is the only one that matters. On a 40-year-old trawler, the boat is almost free. The repairs are the real price. A good surveyor will tell you the same thing every single time. The hull comes to you nearly free. What you are really paying for is everything the owners before you decide to put off. Keep that in your head, because every boat coming up made this list for the same reason. The repair is worth more than the ride. Let me start with one that is going to make a few captains spit their coffee, because the Kadey Krogen 42 is a legend, and it earned that name honestly. It crossed oceans. It is built like a commercial vessel. Only about 206 of them were ever made over 22 years, and I would put a good one up against almost anything its size. But there is a window of these boats you have to know about before you wire a dime. Until 1993, the 42 was built with a cord hull below the waterline. Closed cell coring right down where the boat meets the sea. Now, coring is not automatically bad. The yard used it to keep a heavy full displacement boat light and stiff, and done right it works. But the version you have heard that every old Krogen is bulletproof is not the full picture. Several of the early boats developed whole bottom deflections, the bottom literally oil canning underway, and the company ended up paying to repair some of them before they switched to solid hand leg glass below the waterline in 1993. Here's what that means at the checkbook. Let water find its way into that core through a tired old through hole, and you are not patching a soft spot. You are into a structural repair that some owners have faced for north of $60,000 on a boat where the cheapest examples right now are asking around $40,000. That cord bottom was a warning sign on the early hulls, and plenty of buyers ignored it because the name on the side said Krogen. Get a moisture survey on any boat built before 1993 or walk away. None of that makes the Krogen a bad boat. It just tells you which years to put your hand on the hull before you fall in love. Somebody in the comments is already typing Choy Lee, so let me get ahead of it, because half of that reputation is wrong. Choy Lee was building boats in Hong Kong going back generations. The hulls are often solid fiberglass, and I have walked aboard Choy Lees that were laid up like a bank vault. The hull is usually solid. What they bolted onto it is where the trouble starts. Choy Lee made a lot of their own deck hardware in-house, and a good deal of that stainless and bronze had a habit of corroding years before it should. Worse than the hardware is the wiring. A lot of these boats were run with single conductor cable and no labeling, so owners spend years chasing electrical gremlins through a system that was never meant to last this long. And where the plywood behind the interior teak was thin, that pretty veneer can delaminate and lift. In plain English, the boat will float and the engine will run, but you may rewire half of it and rebed every fitting on the deck. Tap the hole all you want. The real money pit on these is behind the panel, where the surveyor's flashlight does not always reach. Now we get to the worst offender on the whole list, and this one is a whole class of boats rather than a single model. The Taiwan built trawler from before 1985, marine trader, the early CHB, a lot of the budget Albins, all the badges that share the same teak-over everything recipe. Here's the deal you think you're getting. A real 36-foot liveaboard with twin Ford Lehman 120 diesels, the most forgiving marine engine ever bolted into a trawler for $25,000 to $40,000. The Lehman is the good news. Every mechanic on the coast knows it, and parts are cheap and everywhere. The bad news is sitting right over your head. Those gorgeous teak decks are screwed straight down through the deck. Hundreds of screws, sometimes close to 1,000 on one boat, and every single one is a hole for water to find. Water gets under that teak, runs downhill to the lowest point in the deck, and soaks into the core. Then it keeps going. It finds the top of an old fuel tank and sits there. A lot of these boats were built with mild steel tanks, what the old hands call black iron, and they do not rust from the fuel side. They rust from the outside in, right where the deck has been dripping on them for 30 years. And here's the cruel part. Those tanks are usually boxed in and glassed over, so the surveyor cannot even see the part that is going to fail. Pulling and replacing them runs $10,000 to $19,000. And on a lot of layouts, you have to pull an engine just to reach them. Then there are the decks. I put a tap test in the survival guide I wrote for exactly this reason. Take a plastic mallet and tap every square inch, because a dull soft spot is the fiberglass under that teak letting go, and a full teak deck replacement runs $30,000 to $60,000. And these repairs do not wait their turn. The same leak that softens the deck is the leak filling the bilge on top of that tank. So you are rarely fixing one thing. You are fixing the whole chain at once, in the same haul out, with the same yard bill climbing by the day. Add it up. You bought a $30,000 boat and you are staring at $50,000 of work the broker called patina. Even the honest listings will admit that nobody is going to confuse a Marine Trader 34 with a Grand Banks. That is the trap. That is why they are cheap. Now hear me clean. After about 1985, Marine Trader went to solid fiberglass decks and the whole picture changes. There are good ones out there. This is a watch list for the teak deck boats built before 1985. Not a death sentence on a badge. If this is the kind of straight talk nobody else on the dock will give you, hit subscribe. There are more boats coming, and the next list is even uglier, because the boat is only half the story. The engine in the bilge can sink you just as fast, and this is where the smart buyer slows down. Every diesel mechanic reading this already knows the names I'm about to say. Steve Zimmerman, who has forgotten more about these engines than most of us will ever learn, says something simple. You do not measure a marine diesel's life in hours. You measure it in gallons of fuel burned. A Caterpillar 3208, for example, is rated for roughly 30,000 gallons before it is looking at a rebuild. Run it easy at a displacement crawl, and that is 20,000 hours of life. Run it hard, and you can burn through it in a few seasons. So the same engine can be a gift or a grenade, depending entirely on how the last owner ran it. Now here is the part the broker skips. The high horsepower turbo version of that 3208, the 375 and up, is the fragile one. And that block was never designed to be bored out while it sits in the boat. People call it a throwaway. That is not quite right, because you can re-sleeve and rebuild it, but it means pulling the engine and writing a very large check. The naturally aspirated 210 version, on the other hand, is a lifetime engine. Same story with the old Detroit 671. In a low horse, naturally aspirated trawler, That two-stroke is one of the most bulletproof things ever made. Loud, leaks a little oil, drinks fuel, but it will run forever. Push it to the high horse turbo ratings and it starts eating itself at a couple thousand hours. And then there is Volvo Pinna. The block is fine. The problem is the parts. Volvo loves to discontinue the very pieces that fail, the heat exchangers and the oil coolers, and a boat with twin Volvos sells slower and for less because every owner knows it. The engine will keep running. It is the back-ordered heat exchanger, 4 figures and 3 months out, that leaves you stuck at the dock. So what is the good news engine? The boring ones. A Ford Lehman 120, a Perkins 4236, a Cummins 6 BT, a naturally aspirated 3208. Tractor simple, parts cheap and on the shelf, and they will outlast the second owner. And one more thing, Zimmerman will tell you that surprises people. Babying a diesel its whole life, never letting it work, glazes the cylinders just as dead as running it too hard. The fix is the right propeller and the occasional hard run, not a slow crawl forever. I put the whole buy, own, and sell system in writing for the folks who are getting close to signing a check. It is in the link below, for less than a surveyor charges for 1 hour. Back to the list. One more, and it is a strong finish, because for a stretch in the early 1970s, Gulfstar built boats that surveyors describe with words I cannot use on this channel. On the earliest boats, the balsa cord decks were not properly sealed with resin, and the deck hardware went on with no backing plates underneath. You know exactly what that gets you. Water straight into the core, and fittings that tear out under load. On top of that, a lot of these early hulls blister because the yard was experimenting with thin, cheap resin layups to save a few dollars. On the worst of them, the deck flexed underfoot the day it rolled out of the shed. You would think somebody would have said something at the time. Nobody did. The boat sold on price, and the new owners found out the hard way, one soft spot at a time. Here is the fair part, and the experts will back me up. Gulfstar got dramatically better after about 1978. There are well-built later Gulfstars that a sharp surveyor will give 4 stars, but the early ones, the boats built before 1977, are exactly the kind of cheap, pretty trap this whole video is about. So yeah, not great. Before I let you go, let me flip it, because a couple of boats on the cheap end get a worse rap than they deserve, and you can use that to your advantage. Everybody loves to mock the old Bayliner motor yachts. They call them Tupperware. But the diesel ones have a quiet following. They run offshore just fine. And the brokers who specialize in them will tell you they tend to fly through a survey. Watch the stringers and the fly bridge for water. Mind the out-of-production engine parts. And you can buy a whole lot of boat for very little money. Same story with the wood Grand Banks from before 1974. They are gorgeous, and they are built like fine furniture. The catch has nothing to do with build quality. Wood simply needs a wood owner. Refastening, dry rot around the keel bolts and the fuel fills, and a marina that will even take a wooden hull anymore. If that is you, the bargains are very real. So circle back to that boatyard from Stewart to Anna Cortez, the one full of beautiful old trawlers on jack stands with the deal of a lifetime signs. You see it different now. You can read the tarp, because the cheapest boat on the dock is not a deal. It is a question. And the answer is hiding under the teak on top of the tank, and behind the panel the broker does not want you to pull. The full playbook is in that link if you want it. Now, I just gave you the boats to walk past. Next video, I am naming the 3 trawlers the mechanics quietly buy for themselves, the ones with the back of the yard price and the bulletproof bones, and number 1 is sitting on a dock right now for less than a new pickup. It is on screen. Go look.